This is the sixth time that Sunak and Biden will have met. And Biden did miss the King's coronation. So he's now accepting the monarch's invitation to visit the UK and to visit the King himself as he heads to Vilnius for that NATO summit. It's really something of a flying visit, a bit more perfunctory than anything else, because remember that Rishi Sunak and Joe Biden did meet just a few weeks ago in the States. So they had much more substantial discussions, much more substantial bilateral. And of course, they talked about that Atlantic Declaration that they signed. But of course, some disappointment on the British part that that's not a full trade deal, something that obviously they want to prioritise and put on a fast track after Brexit doesn't seem to be happening at all for the UK because, well, why should it? As Obama famously said, Britain can go to the back of that queue. And so what we're seeing today, I think, is more window dressing. It's a nice visit for the UK, but really the main focus isn't this meeting that we're about to see between Biden and Sunak in Downing Street. We're just waiting for the president to arrive there. But it's actually the meeting at 12:30 in Windsor with the King, where no doubt they may talk about things like climate change, topics like that, which are fairly safe, steering clear perhaps of the idea of discussions of cluster munitions and areas where there might be disagreements. Because let's not forget also that recently there's been some discussion about Joe Biden being seen as somewhat anti-British, whether it's intentional or not. And those are things that I think that Britain and the US will be wanting to avoid in today's discussions.
And Jonathan, as you just pointed out, some could be calling this a potentially awkward visit, but more so than that, several allies also question Biden's call to send those cluster bombs to Ukraine, including its biggest ally, the UK.
Yes, that's right, because the UK, of course, is a signatory to a convention on cluster munitions. The US isn't. So the UK is against the provision of those weapons to Ukraine, even if Russia has been using them as well in that war. And Rishi Sunak did speak out about that in recent days. I think that was something he had to do. I don't think it's necessarily something that he'll say too forcefully to Joe Biden today. If he does, it might be very much in private. I think there's a sort of unspoken understanding between European and NATO allies and the US that those countries who are signatories to that convention can't provide them, can't approve the provision of them, but maybe they're not going to disagree too strongly about it. That said, they are very controversial munitions, and that's something that many nations in the world have said they don't wish to tolerate in wars. And therefore, when the Russians were condemned for using them in the Ukraine war, they don't see why Ukraine should therefore be given a free pass, so to speak, to use the same munitions, even with all the provisos that we heard mentioned about the US success rate of their specific cluster bombs, and also about how Ukraine won't be the ones introducing them into that war. But I don't think that this will be a main focus that we'll see certainly in public between the two leaders today.